What a 10 days we've had since the supposed killing of George Floyd, which itself has become controversial. Some people reckon it was staged by, actors, crisis actors they're called. But whatever actually happened there, the left, if you like, in the broadest sense, used that as an excuse to stage what was effectively an uprising across the United States, and of course an attempt in London as well over the weekend. It weren't riots, it was staged, it was organised, it was structured. I mean, as soon as the George Floyd incident was put out on the media, the Antifa kicked into action and began to whip up the black community in Minneapolis to riot, to form together and to congregate and to start. They brought bricks on pallets for them to throw at the police, and they went into the ghettos, the African American ghettos, who actually paid black youths to come and participate in a riot. Antifa is a very structured organisation. It's got strong links to the climate change sort of movement, the climate activists, and it's strongly financed by a group called the Open Society Foundation, which of course is a George Soros front. And these Antifa activists, they're part of a movement, the Sunrise Movement. They meet in groups. They do training on how to create riot situations, how to cause trouble, how to create chaos by blocking roads and setting buildings on fire. And this template that they have, they just put into operation in Minnesota. And of course, the young man in Minnesota, Jewish guy called Jacob Frey, he basically just backed down in the face of this phony riot and told the police to abandon their police station, their fortress, because he didn't want anyone to get hurt. Now, the idea that I've never known that before, the police just to abandon their station to a group of poxy rioters. Of course, the rioters then set the station ablaze, multi-million pounds worth of damage, and that was the signal for an insurrection across America. I mean, we saw black youths enter the town. Suddenly racism was whipped up into a big issue. Supposedly the blacks are being victimised by the police, but the statistics don't bear that out. I mean, the whole of last year there was only 9 unarmed blacks killed by the police, which in a country the size of America and the amount of crime in America is an incredibly low figure, which suggests that the police are actually ultra cautious about inflicting problems on the blacks. But they managed to... There was a green light given to the black youth that you can riot, you can loot in Democrat areas and you'll get away with it. And so we had the trouble in California, in Oakland, California, in New York, and the famous Macy's store was looted in New York, and we saw Foot Locker get looted and mass participation in that. And the media, instead of condemning these thieves and criminals and looters, actually just espoused the Antifa agenda and started saying, America's a racist society, and started pointing at the finger at law-abiding white people and saying they're the problem in the face of this insurrection. But it was, as I say, there was a template that was being used here. The CIA have used that template in places like the Ukraine, during the Arab Spring, other centres in Eastern Europe. You get the mob into the town centre, you create fiction, you create tension, you set buildings on fire, and then you get politicians that come behind the mob to support the mob and call for radical change. And the Democrats didn't fail. They went on their knee, supposedly in sympathy with George Floyd, but really just a sign that they were on board for this pseudo-revolution or insurrection. I mean, Maxine Waters, the congresswoman, called it an insurrection. And all the criticism became directed at Trump. Trump was a racist, you were told. Even the Prime Minister of New Zealand has become a global movement against racism. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, whatever her name is, Ardern, she said that Trump is, yes, he's a racist, and it became echoed through the left across the world and through the media. This attack on the American president and ordinary American people, white Americans, Trump voters, the Trump army, the MAGA army, whatever you want to call them. It just become a sustained attack upon them. And it was like the police, who were supposed to counterattack and stamp on this violence, actually retreated and allowed it to happen, allowed it to get worse. They give the green light to the youth, to Antifa and to Black Lives Matter to do whatever they wanted in Democrat areas. Of course, Trump called out the National Guard because he was taken off guard initially in Washington DC. They attacked the White House, big ranting mob shouting at the top of their voice, "Fuck Trump, fuck Trump," Robert De Niro's slogan. And they started to actually invade the White House, and Trump had to be taken into a secure area of the White House. So it just shows you how off guard the American establishment was for this insurrection, which the Soros-funded groups had planned over the previous year. They'd waited for this opportune moment. And of course, it was at the end of the COVID-19 lockdown. So there's a lot of built-up energy in the youth, a lot of built-up tension. People were frustrated, and suddenly they directed all that frustration at Trump. All structured by paid agitators, paid operatives. The whole thing was, what struck me was the media again. I'd have to emphasise, there was no critical angle in the media at all. They simply went along with this. It was like they were all part of a Soros coalition. The politicians, the media, the rioters, the organisations, they're all in it together, and their only goal was to create chaos, political instability, and attempt a coup against Trump. And it got worse because leading Republicans, the so-called never-Trumpers like Mitt Romney and Colin Powell, and even the former President George Bush, they weighed in on Trump. They started attacking him. And of course, Biden has now been selected as the presidential candidate, and he's got the Democratic campaign behind him. And for the first time since Trump was elected in 2016, the betting markets in Las Vegas flipped against Trump and said there's a chance that he is now no longer favourite to win the election. This was how successful this coup had been against Trump. And, at that point, there could have been panic stations. But Trump is an exceptional character. He stayed cool. He went to that church in Washington, marched out there with his Bible, basically said, "I'm going to re-establish law and order." He got the Republican governors to provide National Guard, protected the White House. And even though these Democrat mayors were baiting the crowd, how irresponsible was that? We're calling for more and more radical approach to this. Trump stood them down. And even then suddenly it switched, because what actually happened a couple of days ago was that the jobless figures for America came out for the month of May. I mean, people were expecting America to go into an economic meltdown at the end of COVID, more and more unemployment, more and more misery. But in fact, the unemployment fell by 2 million. 2 million extra jobs were created as soon as the lockdown ended in these Republican states in the middle of May. And the American economy had suddenly turned back up. There wasn't going to be a catastrophic recession. This was just a sort of an aberration, this period of the COVID virus, 3-month aberration. And people realise Trump is an economic talisman. He knows how to get the economy moving, and he's got it moving again. Now, before COVID, obviously, he got rid of a lot of Obama's regulations, a lot of Obama's health and safety measures and excess taxation and restrictions. And this allows business to just spontaneously take on employees and grow again. He's created that flexibility in the American economy, which means you can bounce back from this COVID. And it's the economy, stupid, as Bill Clinton once said. That's what matters to people: jobs and money and their taxes. They want to keep their money. And Trump is saying, look, we're going to win. Suddenly Trump had a bounce in his step. Despite all this insurrection and all this chaos on the street, and we're seeing Amazon on fire, Amazon headquarters in California. We've seen, you know, all the top stores getting looted, and we've seen all this chaos, the police looking weak. Trump, at the end of the day, came out strong with the military and the National Guard, and most police forces still behind him, and the economy back into gear. COVID's coming to an end, and although for a moment it looked like Trump was going to lose it, the Soros template has failed. Trump has won this battle, and they'll now go quiet again. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they've had their day and it will pass, and that's all it's been. They were hoping for a lot more, but they've had their day and it's over. And Trump again has emerged victorious. The amazing guy that is Donald Trump. He is an awesome figure, and we're going to see the Republicans take ground now, because America wants order. It's a law and order society. The Democrats, in their foolishness, have gone even more extreme and are now calling for the states to defund the police. They actually, in Minneapolis, are calling for the police to be abolished. I mean, how crazy is that? Just give the criminals free rein? Just give the rioters free rein to intimidate law-abiding citizens and to steal from companies? That's not on, is it? Even though a lot of the corporations actually gave money to Black Lives Matter. You know, this myth of racism, it's an old myth. I mean, the opportunities for all races in America are extraordinary. If you live in America, you're privileged, no matter what your race is. So it's all baloney, all this sort of racial cant. But the Democrats are now at war with themselves over how extreme they become. This is the problem. If you give the lunatic fringe, if you call upon them and give them power, empower them, they will start to attack the moderates in the Democrat Party, who are scared to say we're going to defund the police because they know that's insane. So there's now civil war breaking out within the Democrat Party. The Squad, of course, you know, AOC and Ilya Oman and all them, they're with the rioters and they're trying to create more chaos. But it looks like this media coup has failed, and the media have got to be called to account as well. We need a media which represents the voice of the people, the tribune of the people, not of the extremes, not of Soros. Something's wrong in our media. We've now got a campaign to defund the BBC, because we've seen it in Britain as well. The media are not presenting a balanced picture. They're with the radicals and the extremists at every turn, and it's not acceptable. People are withdrawing from the media, going to social media to hear the truth, to hear videos like this and many others, which are speaking the truth about what's happening. But at the end of the day, God has blessed Trump, and Trump is now looking more secure to me to win this election than before the insurrection began. So, you had a good guy, you had a good go, Black Lives Matter, you had a good go, Antifa, but it's going to go nowhere.